There's nothing quite like the thrill of football season. As spectators of the sport, we find ourselves going through a roller coaster of emotions. Imagine what it must be like for the coaches, but braving the pressure, some of them make it to the history books, like George Halas and Bill Belichick. Today we'll be talking about how the two have got more to tie them to each other than just a whopping 324 wins. First up, the two are giants in the world of football. The coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, the brilliant Andy Reid, recently shared his thoughts on Coach Belichick. Reid's viewpoint is quite a unique one, and he's got decades of coaching experience under his belt. Knowing the ins and outs of the industry, he's one of the few who can spot and talk about what's good and what's got to go. He talked about how productive Belichick is, going on to say that his relationship with the team around him is absolutely phenomenal. He even acknowledged that the people in the league are lucky to have Belichick.
A win one for Andy. I mean, I'm just being serious.
And I appreciate all that. Man, I'm humbled by it. When you're in it, you're not focusing on that.
Right.
Or you better not be focusing on it. So I try to...
When you take into account what he's currently up to, Reid said that a talent like his isn't to be taken for granted as we see the players get older. Similarly, Reid's got heaps of respect for Halas as well. He gives Halas the credit he deserves for being one of the forefathers of the league. According to Reid, it was Halas who assisted them to set the pace for all that's there today. The Papa Bear sure set things up for the football players of the future. Reid marveled at how the man was able to carry on doing such a taxing job for so many years while keeping all the other aspects of his life in line too. He donned many hats: dad, general manager, president, and coach. And we've got to say, he excelled in all those roles. Reid particularly stated that he respects the foundations that Halas laid down. Next up, the world of Belichick and Halas often collided. Due to their shared world, the two giants of the football realm definitely had stuff in common. Belichick's link to Halas can be found when you understand who Belichick's father was. Steve Belichick was a college football coach with a long career. He actually knew quite a few assistants on the staff that Halas relied upon in the 1950s and 60s. Another connection was that Bill Wade was actually coached by Steve Belichick as the quarterback at Vanderbilt. It was exactly Bill Wade who later played for the Bears under Halas. The partnership turned out to be quite a fruitful one too, as Wade led the Bears to the NFL championship in 1963. Also, Belichick has lived in Annapolis, Maryland, and so they got more connections with the team when the Bears stopped by to see the Baltimore Colts. Belichick shared the way they were very nice and welcoming, and they let him hang around in the locker room after the game too.
Well, you know what? I didn't win that. No, I didn't win that phase.
You came in second?
I came in second. There were only two of us. Yeah.
He told us he's got a lot of respect for all that Coach Halas and the McCaskies did for the world of professional football. The McCaskies carried the Halas legacy after his death, as Halas's oldest child named Virginia married Edward McCaskey in the year 1943. She also was the principal owner of the team after Halas passed away in 1983. Further up, paving the way to improvement through the force of larger-than-life personality is a Belichick and Halas trademark. Ed Stone, now 89, used to be the beat reporter for the Bears at the Chicago's American, which was a Chicago Tribune afternoon newspaper. Stone reported the beginning of the 1963 season, which got Halas his last title. Stone stated that Halas wasn't an easygoing coach. He was tough, and that he carefully thought about every little thing while working on the preparation of his team. According to Stone, Halas didn't like to talk much and often wasn't eager to give many comments. He remembered that whenever the newspaper had an event centered around the Bears, Halas would often choose to send ahead an assistant coach instead of showing up himself. But Stone remembered that Halas was a totally different guy when he wasn't being the coach. Halas was a much kinder and softer person off the field. We all know we gotta change temperaments to get things done sometimes. Reportedly, Belichick's also got a side that we don't often get to see, according to his friend Reid. Reid shared that Belichick's got a great sense of humor and is really well versed on a whole range of topics other than those that concern the field, and that he's a kind and giving person. It seems that both men prize the job well above what they share with the world. That's their strength, and they're quite alike in that regard. We hear nothing but nice things from those that knew them. Next up, the two are quite fond of keeping their cards close to their chests. No matter what the topic under discussion, if it's got to do with his team, you're not likely to get much out of Belichick on it. Apparently, there were similar reports about Halas too.
George Halas was not always lovable and cuddly. In fact, he was as tough and as crafty as anyone who ever could.
He'd also talk as little as possible about the things that could affect his team. Stone's got a lot to say about this, as it was his job, at one time, to get words out of the great coach, and it's fair to say that he had a hard time doing it. Stone shared that any time there was a cut down early in the season, or if the rosters had to be redefined, Halas would be very secretive about it. He'd point blank and say that releasing information on such matters would mean compromising on team operations, and so such queries best be left alone. Stone recalled that he never liked anyone to know of his plans and practices. Now it seems that Belichick's taken a page from the Halas script, but it's bound to happen. Great minds think alike, don't they? When it comes to the initial 53-man roster, the Patriots are among the teams that announce it the latest. The information doesn't make its way out to make it easy for the other clubs. The same's the case for other things to be reported, such as transactions and injuries. And Belichick's conferences for news updates would make Halas smile. Stone has even said that Halas' conferences sometimes barely had pencil movements. Nothing to write down. Next, both coaches are awesome roster managers. When Don Pearson began working for the Chicago Tribune, the year was 1967, and Halas was coaching his final season. That's why his coverage mostly caught Halas overseeing his owner duties. After having the opportunity to talk to Halas about his career in coaching, he picked up on an important way that Halas and Belichick are similar.
With his hat, run out in the field and literally kick Mack right in the butt. I didn't know who the person was. I just saw, somebody out there doing that. And he tried to get away.
He said both closely followed and carefully managed their rosters. About Belichick, he said that he doesn't own the team, but the dynamics are such that he has a great amount of say in how things go down. He highlighted that it's also what we saw in Halas' management. As per Pearson, Halas probably had more control if we look at the way that he controlled his roster. He'd move the players around and have them come back later too. Further on, both coaches appreciate innovation. Even though Halas and Belichick keep things under wraps when it comes to sharing information, they're both quite open-minded when it comes to playing tactics. Halas often hired assistants and allowed them to coach too. One such decision allowed the development of the T formation, as it was practically thought up by Clark Shaughnessy, one of Halas' assistants. Belichick's comfort and work in innovation is something we're all familiar with. He often keeps certain players around to assist him in coaching. Gerard Mayo's been around and he's been assisting Belichick.
Put all your eggs in one basket, and if it doesn't work, we'll figure it out. While we didn't have a father for a short period of time.
He shared that Coach Belichick's openness to evolving makes him stand out. According to Mayo, the great coach keeps around valuable people who are not afraid to tell him how it is. This allows an expansion of perspective. And lastly, what comes next is always the driving force for Halas and Belichick. After Belichick achieved the big milestone, he was congratulated by a radio show host. He was asked what the achievement meant to him. Belichick, in characteristic focused fashion, replied that it wasn't about him, but it was about the team. Belichick was then quick to put a lid on it by saying, "Time to move off that subject, we've talked enough about it." Reed explained the logic behind this mindset. He said that coaches aren't in the business of counting numbers. As soon as one's down, you gotta pace for the next. There's no progress in getting attached to a figure and giving it meaning and forgetting the goal. And that's great big picture stuff right there. Guess it's a perspective like that which allows such great coaches to lead so marvelously. Back when Halas made the record, it wasn't a topic he dwelt on for long. In fact, the reporters couldn't manage to make him talk about it really. Stone reported that he never even discussed the monumental record with Halas. His own reasons that Halas was just more concerned about the next game coming up. The records didn't do much for the ego of both coaches. There's a great mark of greatness in such a concept, to be devoted so faithfully to your work that it's never quite done. That's all for today from our side. Who's your favorite? Coach Belichick or Coach Halas? Let us know in the comments. Goodbye for now, and see you at the next one.